We are going to move into questions and comments. But first, Dr. Bowman, Dr. Robinson, Dr. Heisel, and Wanda Morris, thank you for those comments, each one of you. I really consider us in Guelph fortunate to have them come to Guelph and speak to us today. I really do. I know you all feel the same. Are there people lined up, I hope, to ask some questions? There's one, and I know there others will follow. State your name at the mic, and then to whom you direct your question and or comment, and then I'll turn my timer on, and we'll get started. We'll start here.
Duncan McKenzie.
Oh, the mic's Brenda.
Dr. Foote told us there's this cohort of baby boomers moving through, and we're all going to get sick and we're all going to be dying. Who's going to pay? I really wonder how financially our children and our grandchildren are going to pay for all these chronically ill people who are going to take months and years to die. Those of us who may think, I want to hasten my death, I think was the term used. It just seems to me financially, economically, we have to start considering this. I know it's very cruel and callous for me to raise this issue, but who's going to pay for all of us to die?
All right. Now, who did you direct that to? I'm sorry?
Ms. Morris, the accountant.
All right.
Without disputing your facts around the aging baby boomers, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disappoint you on the financial side of things. When we look at the numbers of people who are choosing to hasten their dying, it's a very, very small number. It's not going to solve our financial problems. The other aspect of it is that we need to do this by putting in controls and checks and balances, and there's some costs involved in that. So unfortunately, I don't see this as a money-saving measure.
Now, would anyone else like to comment on that? Yes, Dr. Bowman.
The other side of it, however, is not speaking of euthanasia, but really speaking about the kind of treatment that goes on in the hospitals, that goes on for long periods of time. I don't know how we're going to do it, and I think as a society we're going to have to start talking about resources, because pulling euthanasia away from this and just looking at critical care beds, right? Where I'm not talking euthanasia now. We're at absolute capacity, and we're barely hitting this demographic bubble. So we have got to have conversations about these things, and I don't have an answer for you, but I can tell you we're not prepared. We are not prepared, and I work in a hospital, and I'll tell you we're not prepared.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
Charles Wraith. My question is for the speaker on the left and the one in the middle. You've made something of the fact that I, at 77, am healthy, but I say I don't want to live in pain. I would like some way to finish me off if that happens to me. Then you say, well, you don't know anything about it because you're not in that condition. You may change your mind. What on earth is the significance of me changing my mind? There are actual people in actual court cases who are begging to be allowed to put painlessly to death. What on earth does it matter if I, as a supporter, may possibly change my mind?
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, that was Dr. Heisel, I think you asked that question of. Is that correct? Go ahead.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm 77.
Our left, or your left?
Would it be me? Okay. The points about changing their mind, maybe I made it, I'm not sure, maybe we all did. It's just a question of respecting a person's rights and wishes. That, the worry is always that somebody says something in a state they're not in, and then when they get to a state that they are in, they see it very differently. So we're really just looking at how can we protect a person's rights and make sure we've got it right. But a person can, if they're capable, change their mind. But I must say, I have seen patients change their mind significantly when they get into a state of illness. People that thought they'd be okay with it aren't, and people that they thought wouldn't be okay with it are. So we're just really just struggling how to respect people's wishes in a situation like that. Anyone else?
Anyone else like to respond? Okay,
And
Bonda?
I think the point becomes very clear not when someone is thinking about their future, but when they're in the here and now. And they say, okay, at this point, this is what I want. And that's, I think, what we really have to respect. Now, remember that we're advocating for controls and safeguards. For example, things like a 15-day cooling off period between a first and second request, so we can make sure this isn't just a spur of the moment. Nobody walks into the doctor's office at 2 o'clock and goes out in a coffin. But at the same time, that we have the safeguards and checks and balances, yes, we fundamentally need to respect patients' right to choose.
Okay, thank you. Over to this side.
Hi. I don't have a question. I have a comment.
Could you state your name? Sorry.
My name is Joan Charlevoix. I'm a registered nurse. I've nursed 45 years. I've worked cardiac, surgical, neuro, intensive care. And with moving to Guelph, I was part of the pilot project with palliative care for the last 20 years. So I have gone through the different steps of decision making with death and dying. I lived it. I worked in it, and I worked in one day from a 3-month-old baby dying to my 104-year-old person dying, all in the same day. The couple of comments that I want to make, when some people would come to me and say, you know, when somebody had wanted to end their life, they say, well, you know, that's God's will. They can't do that. And I would say, until you walk in their shoes, you don't know what they're dealing with. I had people who died with pain needlessly when I personally do not believe as a nurse that anyone should die in pain or agony. Or because a doctor says, you know, I don't want to give them any more morphine because they might overdose. And I think they're not going to be here 48 hours from now. You can laugh at that, but that's happened. The other thing is people have pain, but the whole family suffers. And to your question, Dr. Bowman, about the palliative care, for me in the community, it was different than in the hospital. We did a lot of extensive study in the community with treatments and everything that we did here that were still not happening in the hospital. And our biggest thing was when GPs would give us a certain order, and we nurses knew beyond that, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
And no, sorry. What I mean is we have one doctor who was head of palliative care, but he was so worn out from just dealing with the palliative care and going to the homes and helping with the end stage. So I found that the palliative care 10 years ago may have been a D, but today with hospice here in Guelph and with the living will that is coming out for people to sign what they want done, I think there has been improvement, but we've got a long way to go. And I personally, as a registered nurse, feel nobody should have to die suffering and in pain, and I hope it is legalized one day. And thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll come back to this side of the room.
My name is Frank Watson, and I'm a retired engineer, male, and a selective believer. My question is to the moderator. I would like to see a show of hands of those for and against euthanasia, having listened to the presentations from these four learned people. Can you arrange that?
I welcome that, actually. That's fine. I don't think it represents anything in particular, but I'm happy to have the hand shown.
Well, it will reinforce your position in the House.
I don't think it will, actually. but I'm happy to have a show of hands. All of those for youth assisted suicide.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's an awful lot. All of those against. All right. And it's probably quite consistent with...
There's a third option. There's a third third option,
Okay, well,
which is in agreement with Dr. Carey.
So I'd like you to tell me more about that third option if you'd go to the mic, and that would be helpful, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, this show of hands is quite consistent, I think, with the statistics, with the polling that's been taken nationally. But it still requires that we properly inform ourselves of the issues. So let's go to this side of the room. We're over here now.
Hi, Lee Bishop. I'm actually a physician here in town. What Dr. Bowman brings up is very good points. One of the things that most people are dealt with when they come into hospital is the question what their code status will be. A lot of people either haven't discussed it with their family members or aren't quite sure, and I think that's something that's really important to discuss with family members over dinner at other times, not when you're critically ill. Because at times when you're critically ill, that's not the time for it to be addressed, and it's not the time to add further stress onto the family with trying to figure out what their parents' wishes would be or their loved ones.
I would
go ahead.
Yeah, I would simply agree with you fully on that. I'm going to I won't digress much because I want to get to the questions. I have an 88-year-old mother, and I have 3 siblings. We are 4. And I'm the only closest to a medical person in the family. And because of my mother's advancing age, it was felt amongst my siblings that it's time to have a conversation with Mother. And I said, I know what she wants. I've known her my whole life. I mean, I know my mother. We all know. Like, it's so obvious. Then I had the conversation, and I was wrong. Big time wrong. Big time wrong. So I tell you that story only to talk about how now that conversation has taken place in a state of health in advance. So it's incredibly important. And if you assume you know, you're probably wrong. The way I was.
Go ahead.
Well, just to reiterate that, and sometimes we get really passionate and really emotional about end-of-life choice and the idea of legalizing choice. But the reality is that many, many, many more people will have a gentle and peaceful death because they know their rights as a healthcare patient and because they have written an advanced care plan. And I would just briefly say there's all kinds of resources on these on our website, and if you haven't had a chance to go there before, I encourage you to check them out, and we offer a wonderful advanced care planning kit free to our members.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. Over to this side of the room.
My name is Hans Reichenfeld, and once upon a time I used to be a psychiatrist. I just wanted to make a few comments, you see. Now, the first thing is that I think it's all very well to discuss these discussions, which have been going for a very, very long time, but they must have been restricted by discussing with professionals, whether they're social workers, doctors, or ethicists, or whatever. And there's been very little research done on the actual opinions of the patients. I'm not familiar of recent research, but I just want to point out that in 2000 there was a survey done, which has been reported in the article in Journal Medicine, when they surveyed 789 cancer patients. And of those groups, they interviewed, with a very structured interview, 70 of them. Now, of that group, out of the 70, 45 felt that euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide were acceptable. 15 felt they were unacceptable, and the remaining 10 were divided in their opinions. And they also noted that the expressed views of several patients were unstable over time, and they changed their minds. 37 also showed evidence of a psychiatric illness, particularly depression. And this has also been noted in an earlier study by Professor Chochinov, who was perhaps the pioneer in the province of Manitoba in developing a a program to deal with questions of end-of-life issues.
I have to ask you to ask your question.
So in other words, the question is, you say, unless we ask the patients who actually suffering from cancer
Right.
and other the deteriorating conditions and find out what they want to see, it'd be much more interesting than discussing them at the open meeting of the public in general.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right. Now we'll go to this side of the room.
Hello. My name's Sandra McCormick, and I just have a few comments to make. I have no medical background, none. I do have a PhD in English literature, and I can say that for all of recorded time, we have all known we're going to die. We just don't know when or how. And I think that we should keep the conversation on human rights. That's what we're talking about. And the language is interesting to me. Some of you mentioned that you should be careful of language. No one was careful of language except for Dr. Bowman. Even those of you who hold the position that I hold, that I should absolutely have the right to make a decision about my death. And I would like to advocate for others to have that right as well. Hopefully I won't be in that position, but I know many people will be in the position of dying in pain and wanting some help. If it's me, I want the right to make the decision. If it's not me, I would like to advocate on their behalf. I do think that stories of deaths with all of the emotional description are out of place. I also think that talking about hastening death or helping death is incorrect, where saying assisted suicide or helping kill myself is not incorrect. Words like kill and suicide are emotionally charged. We are just talking about death and getting some help should we need it or want it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
It's good comments. Thank you.
This side of the room, your name, please, and your comment or question.
Hi, my name is Mary Stober, and I'm originally from the Netherlands, so I'm quite familiar with euthanasia. And my mother was diagnosed with ALS. One of her big wishes was, please, when the time comes, will you help me? What a question to ask your child. The time came, my mother suffered immensely. The time came she couldn't speak anymore because ALS creeps, and her voice was taken away from her. I stood there literally helpless because there was no help for us, the family members. So my question is, when the time comes, a patient has indicated, please, when the time comes, let me go. When the time came, she asked me, and I couldn't do nothing. So I would really appreciate, and I am for euthanasia. Mm-hmm. Please help the family members, too, make that terrible decision.
Mm-hmm. Would anyone like to comment on that? I think it was a statement rather than a question.
Yeah. The reality of helping, it's tough because what it really shows is that it's not just individual choices at all, and there's a larger context, and that's a reality of all of this. It may be a bit simplistic, but if that time were to come, the reality of Canadian legislation is if a person is on life support machines or a feeding tube or dialysis or some form of active treatment keeping them alive, mm-hmm. you can withdraw consent for that treatment, and then the person can die. But if they're not, there's no legal structure at this point. That's essentially what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the dilemma.
Thank you.
I don't know what else I can say.
No. It's quite accurate. Thank you.
Yeah.
To this side of the room.
My name is Dale Ducati, and the third option that I was mentioning is that I don't know. I never voted for nor against because I really don't know. And I really want to thank you, Frank, and the panel for bringing these issues up and giving us more information, because the more information we have, the better decisions we can make. But I suspect that the vast majority of Canadians are in the same boat. If they think about it seriously and not from some purely emotional or purely logical side, I don't know what the answer is. I grieve for people and with people who suffer, particularly at the end of life. And I wouldn't like to see them continue. But life is so precious and so valuable. I buried my mother at 103 about 3 years ago. She had severe arthritis and other ailments. She was relatively comfortable, and she was looking forward to death. But the profound impact that she had on her nieces and nephews and grandnieces and grandnephews in the way she conducted herself, there was stuff that she was continuing to do. She lived a valuable life. So should she have been wiped out because she may have made a decision, or somebody else at some other time? I just don't know. Right. It's a complex issue, and it's not one that's easily resolved, because there's the emotional side, and we've heard some very painful and emotional stuff here today. But the second speaker, I understand where he's coming from. He gave us some excellent statistics that needs to be injected into the discussion as well. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you.